Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I never thought one small pill would change the rhythm of our evening. The night began quietly, the air thick with the faint scent of rain drifting through the open window. My husband sat across from me, his fingers drumming lightly against the armrest, eyes trained on me with a focus that made my breath catch. It wasn't the casual glance of routine, it was something heavier, almost electric, as though he was seeing me again for the first time. I shifted under his gaze, pretending to concentrate on the glass of wine in my hand, but the truth was my pulse betrayed me, racing faster than I could calm it. Then it happened. His hand brushed mine, a touch so brief it could have been accidental, yet the deliberate pressure of his thumb lingering at the base of my palm told me otherwise. Heat climbed up my neck, my skin prickling as if every nerve had woken at once. The silence stretched, and yet it wasn't empty. His eyes locked on mine, unflinching, and the teasing smirk curving at his lips told me he knew exactly what he was doing. My chest tightened, each breath shallow, as though he'd stolen the air from the room and left me with only his closeness to fill my lungs. I wanted to move, to say something playful to break the spell, but the weight of that gaze pinned me still. Then, with a suddenness that made my heart stumble, he leaned in. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his irises, close enough that the warmth of his breath grazed my cheek. My body tensed, not with fear, but with anticipation, an aching awareness that the space between us was shrinking by choice, not accident. His voice was low, barely above a whisper, but it vibrated through me as he said, "I don't think I can hold back tonight." The words lingered, heavy, before silence returned, thicker than before. I swallowed hard, my lips parting, but the response caught in my throat. All I could do was feel the rush of heat, the tremor in my hands, the undeniable pull drawing me toward him. And just as I thought he might close the distance fully, he stopped, holding me hostage in that charged stillness, leaving me desperate to know what would happen next. The rain had grown heavier outside, the steady rhythm drumming against the glass like a second heartbeat in the room. I sat curled up on the couch, the aftertaste of wine still on my tongue, but it wasn't the drink that made me dizzy, it was him. My husband paced slowly near the window, shoulders tense, as though the storm had seeped inside him too. We had been married for years, long enough to know each other's patterns, silences, and sighs. Yet lately, something had shifted. The easy laughter that once filled our home had been replaced with quiet pauses, conversations that skimmed the surface but never broke through. He had been coming home late, his tie loosened, his eyes tired. I pretended not to notice the distance, but in truth, it gnawed at me. Tonight was different. The blue capsule had been his idea, a whispered solution to a problem he never admitted aloud. I had caught the flicker of insecurity in his eyes when he mentioned it, how he worried about not being enough, about time stealing pieces of him he couldn't get back. My chest ached at the thought, because to me he was still the man who had once made my knees weak with a single smile. But men rarely voice their fears, they carry them in silence, and I had learned to listen to what he didn't say. When he finally turned from the window, his gaze softened, but it carried weight. There was longing there, yes, but also a kind of desperation, an unspoken plea for connection. My breath caught again as he crossed the room, the air between us charged. His hand brushed a loose strand of hair from my face, fingertips grazing my cheek. That simple touch unraveled me more than any grand gesture ever could. "I've missed this," he murmured, his voice low, almost raw. I wanted to say I had too, but the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I leaned slightly into his palm, my heartbeat tripping over itself, betraying me. He noticed. He always noticed. A faint smile tugged at his lips, but his eyes remained searching, as though he was afraid I might slip away if he looked away for even a second. The tension tightened again, the kind that wasn't just physical but rooted deep in years of love, fear, and all the spaces in between. Every brush of his hand, every stolen glance carried more than desire, it carried history, fragility, and the desperate need to prove we still belonged to one another. But just as he leaned closer, a shadow of hesitation flickered across his face, halting him mid-breath. That pause said everything. There were truths left unspoken, questions left unanswered, and a storm far greater than the one outside building silently between us. And I was left wondering, when the silence finally broke, would it bring us closer, or tear us apart? The storm outside had softened into a quiet drizzle, but inside, the air was anything but calm. His hand still lingered against my cheek, yet there was a distance in his eyes, a storm of his own he wasn't saying aloud. "You've been different lately," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He froze, just for a moment, before pulling back slightly. "Work's been heavy," he said too quickly, his jaw tightening. It was the kind of answer meant to close a door, not open one. But I had lived long enough beside him to know better. I tilted my head, my gaze narrowing, heart pounding. "Is it really just work?" The silence that followed was sharp, almost cruel. My chest tightened. I had seen the way his eyes lingered when we were out together, how his smile stretched a little wider when another woman laughed at his jokes. It wasn't betrayal, not yet, but the seed of jealousy had rooted itself in me all the same. And now, with him standing so close, his breath warm against my skin, that jealousy twisted into something else, something dangerously close to longing. What if he didn't see me the same way anymore? What if I wasn't enough to hold his gaze? He stepped closer, as if reading my thoughts. His hand caught mine, firm, almost desperate, and when our eyes met again, there was no mistaking the fire there. "Don't think for a second I've stopped wanting you," he said, voice rough. "If anything, it's harder now, because I see you, and I remember everything I could lose." My pulse raced, heat rushing to my face. The boldness of his words stirred something forbidden inside me, an ache for reassurance, for proof that he was still mine, wholly and completely. I wanted to melt into him, to believe every word, but a part of me still questioned. Was this passion born of love, or of fear that someone else might take my place? The weight of the moment pressed down, thick with desire and doubt, and I knew we were standing on the edge of something we could never take back. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the world outside washed clean, but inside the room, the tension only grew heavier. The house was quiet, no distractions, no excuses, no chance to hide behind routine. Just the two of us, standing too close, our breaths filling the silence like a storm waiting to break. I tried to step away, to put space between us, but his hand caught mine before I could move. His grip wasn't rough, but it was certain, as though letting go wasn't an option. The heat of his palm burned against my skin, and my resolve wavered. "Tell me you don't feel this," he said, voice low, almost shaking. His eyes locked on mine, sharp and unrelenting, daring me to deny what was so clearly thrumming between us. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I should have looked away, but I didn't. I couldn't. Every glance, every brush of his hand had been building to this, an invisible thread pulling tighter and tighter until there was no space left to breathe. I whispered, "I feel it," before I could stop myself. The words slipped out, fragile and dangerous. The corner of his mouth lifted, not in victory, but in relief, as though he had been holding his breath just as long as I had. He stepped closer, and suddenly the distance between us was nothing but a fraction of air. His scent, warm and familiar, surrounded me, and I felt my chest rise and fall too quickly, nerves tangled with desire. Every part of me screamed to give in, to close the gap, to let the moment consume us. But then I saw it, the flicker of conflict in his eyes, the hesitation he couldn't quite hide. Something unsaid lingered on his lips, something that made me pause. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. And then, just as I thought he might finally bridge the space between us, he let go of my hand, turning away, his shoulders tense. "I can't," he muttered, almost to himself. The silence that followed was unbearable, and my chest tightened with 100 questions. Couldn't, or wouldn't. And what truth was he still hiding that kept us from crossing that final line? The silence after his words was unbearable, pressing down like the weight of the storm that had passed. I stared at him, his back turned, his shoulders rigid. My chest tightened, my mind racing with possibilities. Couldn't. Wouldn't. Or, didn't want to. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling when I finally asked, "What are you not telling me?" He didn't answer right away. His hands flexed at his sides, as if he was fighting an invisible battle. Then he turned, and the look in his eyes was both heartbreaking and terrifying, raw, exposed, and far too honest. "I wasn't sure if I should," he whispered. "But you deserve the truth." My pulse quickened, dread and desire tangling inside me. "Say it," I urged, though part of me already feared what was coming. His jaw tightened before the words tore free. "I wasn't only taking those pills for you. I was taking them because I was afraid you'd notice. Afraid you'd see that I'd already given some of myself to someone else." The room spun. My breath hitched, shallow and unsteady. "Someone else?" I repeated, barely a whisper. He closed his eyes, guilt etched into every line of his face. It never went too far, not physically. But I let it get close. Too close. And the worst part? He opened his eyes, piercing into mine. I thought of her. Even here. Even with you. The confession sliced through me, sharp and merciless, yet beneath the pain was something hotter, more dangerous, the sting of jealousy igniting into fire. My body betrayed me, shivering not just with anger, but with the raw, reckless need to reclaim him. To prove that no one else could touch what was mine. I stepped forward, my voice low, almost shaking with fury and desire. "Then look at me now. Tell me if you still see her when you're this close." His eyes widened, caught between shame and hunger, and in that suspended moment, the tension snapped. He reached for me, hands trembling as though he feared I'd vanish. When his forehead pressed to mine, our breaths tangled, hot and uneven, every nerve screaming. The storm outside had gone, but inside, we had become one. Desire, betrayal, love, and desperation, everything collided in that fragile space between restraint and surrender. And just as our lips nearly brushed, he pulled back again, eyes dark, voice breaking. "If you knew who she was, everything would change." The words struck like thunder, leaving me breathless, reeling. A secret identity. A betrayal closer than I ever imagined. But he didn't say more. He left the name hanging in silence, pulling me into a moment where passion and truth clashed so violently, I couldn't tell which would consume us first. The air between us pulsed like a live wire, the weight of his unfinished confession pressing harder than the storm that had shaken the house earlier. My hands were still clutching his shirt, but I forced myself to step back. I needed to see his face clearly, no closeness to blur the truth. "Say it," I demanded, my voice trembling with equal parts fear and fury. "Tell me who she is." His eyes darted away, and that hesitation cut deeper than the words themselves. "If I do," he whispered, "you won't look at me the same again." Tears burned at the back of my eyes, anger surging like fire in my chest. "You think I don't already see you differently?" My voice cracked. "You think this doesn't already change everything?" For the first time, his composure broke. His hands ran through his hair, his breathing ragged. "It was your friend," he said finally, voice low, each word like a hammer. "The one who always lingers too long when she visits, the one who looks at me like she knows me better than she should." I didn't stop it. I didn't cross the line, but I didn't close the door either. My knees almost buckled. The image of her, smiling at me, sitting at my table, laughing in my kitchen, twisted into something poisonous. My chest ached with betrayal, my throat raw with words I couldn't even form. "How could you?" I choked out. "How could you let her into us?" His voice broke, and for the first time, tears rimmed his eyes. Because I was weak. Because I was afraid of losing you, and somehow I nearly lost you anyway. But I swear, it was you I wanted, even when I was too blind to see it. The room spun with hurt and fury, but underneath it all was something more dangerous, the pull of him, the history we shared, the love that refused to die even under the weight of betrayal. My heart warred with my pride, and I hated that I still wanted to touch him, still wanted to claim him back from the shadow of her. You've broken something, I said, my voice trembling but firm. And I don't know if it can be fixed. But if you want me, truly want me, you're going to have to prove it. Not with pills, not with excuses. With truth. With loyalty. With nothing left unsaid. He stepped closer, tears falling freely now, his hand reaching for mine with a desperation that made my pulse stumble. Then let me fight for you, he said, voice raw. Because losing you would be the real betrayal. I let the silence stretch, the storm outside finally giving way to stillness. My heart was fractured, but it still beat for him. And though forgiveness wouldn't come tonight, the decision lingered in the air, whether to rebuild, or to walk away forever. The silence after his confession lingered like smoke in the air, heavy and suffocating. My chest ached with the weight of everything that had been said, and everything that had nearly broken us. For a moment, I thought I would turn away, let the shards of our trust scatter and never look back. But when I met his eyes, what I saw wasn't arrogance or excuses. It was fear. It was remorse. It was love stripped bare of pride. He dropped to his knees in front of me, his hands trembling as they reached for mine. I don't deserve another chance, he whispered, voice raw and uneven. But I'll spend every breath I have proving I'm worthy of one, if you'll let me. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. My heart screamed at me to hold on to the anger, to keep the walls high and impenetrable. Yet the truth was undeniable, I still loved him. Fiercely. Painfully. Completely. I cupped his face, my fingers brushing away the wetness on his cheeks. You broke me, I admitted softly. But maybe we can build something stronger out of what's left. If you're willing to fight for us. His lips trembled into the faintest smile, a glimmer of hope sparking in his eyes. I'll fight every day, he vowed. I'll never let doubt or silence take me from you again. The closeness between us returned, not sharp and urgent like before, but tender, fragile, and healing. When he pressed his forehead to mine, I let out a shaky breath, finally releasing the tension I had carried for so long. His warmth seeped into me, not as fire this time, but as a steady flame, quiet, enduring, and real. I don't need perfection, I whispered. I just need you. All of you. Only you. And then, at last, his lips met mine. The kiss wasn't wild or desperate, it was slow, reverent, full of apology and promise. Every brush of his mouth against mine told a story of mistakes made, forgiveness sought, and a love that refused to die. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his hand over my heart. Still mine? He asked softly. I covered his hand with mine, squeezing gently. Always. But this time, we do it right. The storm had passed, the night now still and quiet. Outside, the first break of dawn painted the window with soft light, as though the world itself offered us a second chance. And in that moment, I knew, we were no longer standing on the edge of breaking. We were choosing to begin again. Together.